The valley mouth loomed ahead, shrouded in darkness so thick that even NVGs struggled to pierce it. Walls of rock rose sharply, casting long, unnatural shadows. The wind carried a metallic tang, a scent of rusted metal and disturbed earth. It reminded us that the ground had seen deliberate movement. Kay adjusted his radio, whispering a check to command. The reply was a hiss that seemed intelligent, pulsing with the vibration beneath the valley floor. We advanced in single-file rifles at ready. Every clink of gear was magnified in the oppressive silence. The marksman froze, scope fixed on a glint along the ridge. The pulse of unspoken unease hit the team simultaneously. The breacher's hands brushed tire tracks in the sand. They were deep, deliberate, fresh. Whoever left them knew how to move unseen. The medic inspected overlapping footprints. They followed patterns, not random scatter, as though the unknown had rehearsed our path. A faint pulsing glow emerged from vents at the base of the warehouse, hypnotic like a heartbeat. The tunnel seemed to breathe a vibration underfoot that resonated through boots and rifles. The AO itself had become an adversary. TL raised his hand in a slow, deliberate signal. We froze instantly, sensing the weight of command in the stillness. The folder lay flat on the table, marked Alpha 9. To the outside world, it was meaningless. To us, it was the weight of missions never meant to exist. We were forged not in parades, but attrition. Training stripped us down until nothing remained but reaction and trust. Alpha 9 had no banners, no legends. We were scars stitched together, carried forward by muscle memory. Each of us bore our history quietly, families' broken wounds still aching, friends lost in places no map acknowledged. Our equipment told the truth. M4A1 rifles marked by scratches, optics, rattling loose NVGs clouded with dust. Nothing shone, but everything worked. The air in the room smelled of oiled steel and paper gone brittle. Even here, away from battle war, pressed through the walls. The order arrived, sealed heavy with black bars. One line was clear extract, high-value target from derelict storage site. Just coordinates and silence. Intelligence painted the picture with cold strokes, minimal resistance, poorly armed. Low risk, words crafted to comfort those far away. Maps were outdated, coordinates blurred. Anyone who looked close saw the gaps. But doubt is a luxury operators do not voice. Success would mean a clean breach target in custody, exfil on time. One more line entered in silence. Failure meant nothing on paper. It meant erasure. Reports sealed names, omitted families, told half-truths. Memory became the only witness. Around the table, tension wrote its own language. One man flipped the same page, searching for certainty where none existed. Another tapped his boot beneath the chair, a rhythm that betrayed the questions discipline buried. The medic wound tape around his fingers, then unwrapped it, beginning again. A ritual carved from repetition. The marksman leaned back, eyelids low, not sleeping, calculating sightlines that lived only in his head. The breacher cracked a dry smile when the silence grew heavy. His words were not meant to amuse, but to keep the air from collapsing. At the head of the table sat the team leader. Calm, unreadable, his judgment would be the only law. The projector flickered to life. Its pale light painted the wall with maps and shadows. The AO appeared a valley cut into the earth, a warehouse leaning into collapsed walls, fractured like broken teeth. Satellite stills showed tire tracks. Heat signatures bled like shadows. To us, noise always hid a signal. The threat matrix was neat on paper, low risk. The same words carved into too many memorials. We had buried men under that phrase. No one in the room trusted it, but questions stayed locked behind clenched jaws. Orders demanded silence, and silence weighed more than doubt. Preparation began with ritual precision. Magazines tapped, optics adjusted, every click sharp, every motion final. Operator K, the radio man, tested the net. Static hissed. His eyes lingered on the interference as if it whispered something. He had always been the one to catch anomalies. That gift made him invaluable and alone. Every man carried his role. K was the tether, the pulse that kept silence from turning into death. We packed in near silence, broken only by the rip of Velcro and the metallic scrape of steel against stone. These sounds became our language. The medic moved between men, tugging at webbing, offering no words, but giving quiet reassurance in touch. The marksman polished a scope already clean, fogging the glass with breath, cursing softly to remind himself he existed. The breacher traced a circle into the dust, then erased it. Small rituals kept men sane. The team leader adjusted nothing. His stillness itself was the anchor calculated calm against the storm building in the room. One by one, rucksacks were lifted. Heads nodded not to the mission, but to each other. The fluorescent clock ticked with brutal indifference, a countdown hammering us toward the inevitable. The projector clicked off. We walked out carrying not certainty, but the heavy knowledge that the file had left something unsaid. The valley mouth closed around us like a throat, its walls steep and silent, swallowing our sound until every footstep echoed too loudly. The NVGs washed the world in ghostly green, painting every stone and shadow as if it were alive. The wind dragged sand across our boots in thin veils. Kay raised his radio to check comms, his voice low, but the reply came only as a hiss that pulsed like breath. He tapped his headset, eyes narrowing, but said nothing. We advanced along a dried riverbed. The stones shifted with sharp crunches that seemed to break the night apart. Even the night itself seemed to retreat from the valley floor. The marksman stopped, rifle raised. A faint flash of light cut the dark from the ridge, a glint of glass. He lowered his weapon slowly, but his breathing quickened. Ahead, the warehouse emerged as a broken silhouette. The file had called it abandoned, but fresh tire tracks cut a path straight toward its gates, the tread marks crisp, too recent to ignore. The breacher crouched low, tracing the ruts with gloved fingers. The grooves were deep, made by heavy vehicles, and revealed steel shavings caught in the dirt. The medic signaled us over to another detail, footprints overlaying the tire tracks, as patterned, not scattered. Each print whispered questions we could not answer. Every step further into the valley compressed the air around us, as if the canyon walls leaned closer. Our own breathing became loud, labored, and unnatural. Kay adjusted his frequency again, whispering into his mic, but the channel dissolved into harsh static. This time, the interference carried rhythm, as if someone was deliberately jamming us. We reached the outer perimeter of the warehouse. A faint hum rose through the ground beneath us, too steady to be the wind. Something mechanical was alive below. The recon operator tapped his boot. The second strike rang hollow, the vibration traveling through the earth. Whatever lived here, it wasn't abandoned. TL raised his fist, and the formation froze. The hum beneath us seemed to grow louder, though none of us moved. It was the kind of moment soldiers remember, not the gunfire, but the silence before it. A pale flicker bled through vents at the base of the warehouse walls, rhythmic like a slow heartbeat. The glow came and went alive, but hidden a pulse we did not understand. The marksman reported another glint from the ridge, this time sharper metallic. The light held for a second longer before vanishing. Someone or something was watching. We pressed close to the warehouse wall, NVGs scanning every seam and crack. Our own equipment betrayed us. Each sound was magnified, rolling across the canyon like signals to the unseen. Kay raised his hand sharply. The static now carried a shape almost patterned, as if layered with coded chatter. He couldn't understand it, but the way his shoulders stiffened told us enough this was no accident. At the main gate, the breacher examined the steel. It was welded shut, fresh seams glinting under infrared. The file had promised an abandoned site, but this was maintained, protected, and alive. Through the metal, faint echoes reached us, chairs, scraping voices too muffled to catch, then a sudden deliberate silence. Someone inside knew we were out there. We shifted along the wall, the medic stepping light, but his boot knocked loose a casing from the sand. It was 762 NATO brass, still clean. The sight was armed. The marksman crouched, turning the shell in his hand, the faint scent of cordite still clinging. He looked up, his face shadowed, but his eyes said what no one voiced. We were already too late to believe the file. The recon operator pointed to rubble. Beneath it, a hatch gleamed, edges worn from repeated use. It was no forgotten access tunnel, it was a thoroughfare. We circled to cover angles. TL's silhouette loomed steady, hand raised in silent order. He looked more like a statue than a man anchoring us in the storm of doubt. The valley itself seemed to exhale wind, rushing suddenly through the canyon, carrying sand in sheets. Even nature seemed compromised. Kay whispered again into his mic, voice low. The response was immediate, foreign chatter, sharp, fast, unintelligible. It wasn't random static. It was someone speaking back. The medic's gloves trembled briefly as he gripped his rifle, fingers tightening until knuckles blanched. His discipline was strong, but fear still leaked in the smallest ways. The breacher brushed his palm across the concrete foundation. It came away damp, smelling faintly of fuel. Something was moving below, something powered, something hidden. We stacked against the tunnel hatch rifles, angled low safeties flicked off. The sound of weapons readying was sharp final cutting into the air. For long seconds, nothing happened. The canyon held its breath, the silence so thick it felt alive, pressing against our ears like pressure underwater. Then, from within the tunnel, came the slow scrape of metal on metal. It was deliberate, like something dragging steel claws against stone. The sound faded, leaving a silence sharper than before. TL's hand dropped. The signal was clear. Breach. Every man inhaled shallow and fast, steadying himself. The moment felt heavier than any firefight. We moved forward as one sliding into the tunnel's mouth. The dark swallowed us whole, the hum below shifting into a growl that seemed to breathe with us. And as the earth closed over our heads, every unspoken doubt from the briefing returned. The file had lied. The valley was alive. And we had just stepped into its throat, a place where no one would hear us scream. The mission was no longer about a target. It was about survival, and the hunt had turned into a trap with us as the prey. The team pushed deeper into the tunnel dust, rising with each careful step, and a low, insistent vibration shook the floorboards. Kay's voice cut into the comms one last time before the channel dissolved completely into static, leaving only a hiss that filled our ears with its own warning. The marksman's scope caught a movement ahead, shadows shifting against the walls, but the angle was wrong, impossible, and then gone before he could track it. The breacher's gloves scraped against metal beams hidden in the rubble, a soft metallic groan that seemed alive, responding to our presence as we advanced. TL motioned forward silently, but his hand trembled imperceptibly. We all saw it in the NVG glow, the small betrayal of tension beneath his practiced calm. The medic's footsteps faltered on uneven debris almost imperceptibly, as though the tunnel itself wanted to trip him, to remind us that control was slipping. A sudden clatter echoed from behind a stack of crates falling on its own. We froze, no wind, no animal. Something unseen shifted the world around us. Kay's silhouette disappeared in a bend of the tunnel. One moment he was at the rear, the next, the NVG glow swallowed him completely and panic rose. The marksman whispered a silent curse, his eyes catching the glint of metal in the dark as he scanned for any sign of our radio operator. From somewhere above, a soft scraping continued, rhythmic, deliberate. The valley's hum became an almost musical pattern, unnerving, alive, as if anticipating our every move. The breacher felt a draft of air carrying a chemical tang, unfamiliar and sharp. He paused, signaling a halt. We obeyed without a word. The tunnel opened slightly to a chamber walls lined with rusted containers. Footprints led between them, recent, deliberate, calculated. Not the work of abandoned forces. We advanced single file, the NVG lights, catching glints of wires and equipment. Each step seemed to amplify the static in Kay's radio, as if the interference had a life of its own. TL scanned the chamber quickly. The breathing was shallow, measured, and yet uneven. Something was wrong. We all felt it, though the order to move still held. A muffled metallic thump came from the far wall, then silence. The marksman raised a hand to signal caution, but the gesture felt hollow. The room swallowed it whole. Our shadows danced across walls, distorted by the green glow, and for a moment it was impossible to tell which shadows belonged to us and which moved independently. The medic crouched low, inspecting the floor for pressure plates or tripwires, finding none, but the sense of danger intensified as if invisible. Suddenly, a distant crash echoed, the sound bouncing off the tunnel walls, reverberating in the chest like a heartbeat accelerated. The breacher's hand froze on a doorframe, scratches along the metal, not old, not random. Something had been inside recently, watching, waiting. Kay's voice crackled briefly through the static, distorted beyond recognition. We strained to understand, but only hiss answered, and our tether to command was lost. TL motioned for the team to split a calculated risk. We obeyed, sliding into shadowed corners, each man covering an angle, eyes scanning. The marksman caught movement again, a figure darting behind a container, but when focused, nothing remained. The human mind had begun to falter. The tunnel narrowed again. We pressed forward, shoulders brushing walls. Our own movements amplified every step, a potential signal to the unknown. A soft humming grew louder in pitch, almost mechanical, almost sentient, resonating through the floorboards beneath us. The medic touched the wall metal, cold and damp. The sensation ran up his arm, a warning he could not name, a subtle fear he chose to ignore. TL paused at a junction, gesturing for silence. Even trained ears could hear static in the air, the pulse of something unidentifiable. The breacher knelt to inspect the floor. Tiny impressions in the dust suggested movement that had occurred while we watched, too fast, too deliberate. A sharp, metallic clang rang from the ceiling, followed by nothing. Our muscles tensed. NVG light caught fleeting reflections that were gone in the next blink. K's radio buzzed briefly, a single distorted tone, then silence. We realized he had been separated entirely, swallowed by the maze of tunnels. The marksman adjusted his scope, scanning each shadow, each corner. Nothing obeyed logic anymore. The environment itself seemed hostile. We advanced past overturned crates, metal rungs and shattered debris, the floor unstable, the hum growing in intensity. The tunnel bent sharply, obscuring line of sight. Breathing became louder than our voices, and even the smallest misstep felt like a signal to the unknown. The breacher's hand brushed against a pipe, carrying warmth, unexpected, alien, as if the facility still breathed with life unknown to us. TL paused briefly, hand clenched into a fist. We held position, every operator frozen, counting heartbeats as seconds stretched into minutes. A shadow moved ahead, too quick to be human. The marksman readied his weapon, but held fire. The rules, training, and doubt collided in a single frozen moment. The medic's kit rattled against his chest as he crouched tense. He glanced toward the rear, where K should have been, absence heavy in the formation. We moved as one, careful, deliberate, every step measured. The unknown ahead was active, aware, and waiting. The walls of the tunnel seemed to narrow, the hum of vibrations, converging, pressing against us. Every sound was amplified, every motion under scrutiny. A metallic scraping echoed from the side chamber. We froze, rifles, leveled, breaths caught. Something had shifted, something alive. The marksman whispered a silent assessment, too clean, too controlled. Everyone understood without words. The file had omitted critical details. TL signaled forward again, resolute. Our steps were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if walking into an unspoken judgment. Finally, we reached the threshold of the central chamber. The vibration underfoot intensified, the air thick with anticipation. We were fully inside, tether to command broken uncertainty absolute. We stacked along the walls, NVGs sweeping every shadow, every crevice, every reflection. The hum became a growl, and in that moment, we understood we were no longer in control. The tunnel's mouth behind us disappeared into darkness. K was gone, the interference complete. The unknown had taken him first, leaving the rest of us to follow blindly. We stepped into the chamber, every sense screaming. Dust hung thick in the air, metallic tang biting at throats. The chamber widened suddenly, the ceiling low and uneven. NVG green washed over every surface, turning rusted metal into shadowed shapes. Dust hung thick in the air, disturbed by our movements. The low hum beneath our feet grew into a vibration we could feel in our chests. TL halted us. Every breath felt loud, invasive, a potential signal to whatever moved unseen. K's absence was a physical weight. The static-filled radio offered nothing but a hiss, leaving the team to rely on instinct. The breacher crouched near the far wall, listening to faint metallic groans. The floor shifted slightly beneath his weight. A sharp metallic scrape echoed from above, deliberate, followed by a silence so deep it felt alive. Every heart raced. The marksman swept his scope across the walls. Each glint was a question mark, threat, or mirage. His grip on the rifle tightened. The medic scanned the floor for traps but found none. Still, every movement carried a risk. A soft vibration traveled along the wall, moving in rhythm with the pulsing hum beneath our boots. TL motioned forward, his tension palpable. Dust fell from the ceiling in thin streams, disturbed by airflow we could not identify. The room felt alive, waiting. A sudden crash rang from the far wall, a metal object falling its weight unknown, followed by a silence even heavier than before. The breacher found scratch marks along the concrete floor, parallel and precise, suggesting intelligence, design, and presence. K's radio buzzed, briefly, garbled beyond recognition. His absence gnawed at the formation, creating a psychological pressure we could not dispel. The hum beneath us shifted in frequency, higher-pitched, almost deliberate. It felt aware of us, reacting to our steps. TL's jaw clenched, a silent order passed, proceed cautiously. The rules of engagement were meaningless here. The marksman's scope caught movement again too fast for a human too controlled. Shadows shifted independently, bending reality. The breacher's hands glided along pipes, discovering wiring and small devices that hummed faintly. We had entered an environment designed to watch us. The medic's breathing remained shallow, his body tensed. His mind raced with the unspoken fear that the unseen had already calculated our steps. A metallic thump echoed from above, followed by a soft scuttling that ran through the walls like veins. Someone or something was moving with purpose. TL motioned for a split of the formation, a calculated risk. Each operator obeyed, understanding that hesitation could be fatal. Footsteps or echoes of them bounced around the chamber, impossible to trace. We moved slowly, aware that every sound could betray our position. Dust shifted under boots, catching faint glimmers of light reflected from metal surfaces. Every detail was amplified. The hum now pulsed in rhythm with our anxiety. Each beat echoed through floor and wall alike. TL paused at a junction, hand clenched. His presence anchored us, but the tension radiating from him was palpable. The breacher traced a line along the wall, noticing new scratches and fresh scuff marks. The environment itself seemed to anticipate us. The marksman caught faint reflections on distant surfaces, fleeting, teasing recognition before vanishing. A metallic scrape resonated suddenly from the side chamber. We froze again, rifles leveled. Every second stretched into eternity. K's absence echoed in our formation. The team's cohesion now relied entirely on instinct and trust. TL, advanced hand raised, leading the team into the chamber's center. The floor vibrated subtly, responding to our intrusion. Every step was a decision: move carefully or risk unseen consequences. Every movement was conscious, calculated, and tense. The hum beneath the chamber floor intensified, a low, resonant pulse that resonated through our chest, an omnipresent reminder of danger. K was gone. The team was incomplete. The unknown had claimed him, leaving us to navigate a chamber alive with awareness and threat. We stepped deeper, fully aware that the path forward offered only uncertainty, that each decision could be our last. The mission objective had become secondary to survival. The final steps into the chamber were measured, every operator synchronized by training and trust. Yet every heartbeat screamed of what lay beyond understanding. The team emerged into the pale gray light of dawn, the air thick with dust and the acrid scent of metal from the chaos below. TL paused, scanning and counting heads. K was gone, an absence that pressed down on us with a weight heavier than any physical injury. The medic checked over bruises and minor burns. The tension was etched into every shoulder, a reminder that battle leaves scars unseen. The marksman adjusted his scope for the last time. No movement, only the whisper of wind over broken stone, yet the presence of something watching lingered. The breacher knelt, brushing his fingers along the dust of the tunnel exit. Fresh scuff marks told of deliberate movement, of an encounter we had missed. We reassembled into a loose formation. Each man adjusted straps and loaded magazines, mechanical motions grounding us amid chaos. The medic distributed water silently. Hands trembled slightly, but the gesture reminded us we were alive. TL surveyed the team again, his eyes lingering. The glance carried the understanding we had survived, but the cost was more than we could articulate. The wind shifted, carrying dust and faint scents from the warehouse fuel rust and the intangible tang of something recently alive. Each operator checked their weapon again, fingers brushing over cold metal magazines, clicking as if for reassurance. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. The marksman crouched, picking up a fragment of wire. It told a story of preparation, defense, and the unknown forces we had encountered. The breacher examined a metal hatch, tracing scratches too deliberate to be accidental. It was proof the site had been active moments before our arrival. K's rucksack sat where he had vanished, a silent monument to absence. We all noticed the void in our formation. The medic crouched beside it, brushing dust from the straps. Even in survival, the mind catalogues loss. TL signaled to move down a shallow slope. Each step was careful. The terrain itself seemed wary. Footsteps on gravel, the scrape of boots and the clink of gear echoed unnaturally. The operators flinched, scanning instinctively for movement. The marksman paused, peering into the valley. His eyes caught the faint reflection of a glinting metal fragment. The breacher knelt again, noting footprints and subtle vibrations. They all told a story of unseen presence we could not fully read. The medic moved through the formation, checking pulse points. Each man carried invisible injuries, tension, fatigue, and dread. TL stopped and surveyed the horizon. The sun had begun to rise, but the light was pale, offering little comfort. The wind shifted, carrying tiny echoes from the warehouse. Each rustle seemed amplified in the quiet, reminding us that survival did not equal safety. The operators adjusted gear silently. Every micro-movement was deliberate, rehearsed, controlled. We reached the debrief point. TL raised his hand. The team sank to the ground, exhausted yet vigilant. The medic distributed rations and water. Words were unnecessary. The silence conveyed both relief and grief. The marksman checked his rifle. Shadows moved where there should have been none. The mind created monsters when the body had survived real ones. The breacher crouched near a disturbed patch of dirt, noting organized, purposeful footprints. TL walked the perimeter, glancing back at the valley floor. K's absence was a tangible void, heavy with guilt. We prepared for extraction, checking every strap, ensuring nothing was forgotten. Even small oversights could be costly. The valley lay behind us, empty and silent, yet full of memories, hums, scrapes, and shadows that should not have moved. The first rays of the sun illuminated dust and debris, revealing evidence of what had transpired and of the profound cost of our survival. The air was thick with dust and the faint metallic scent of the warehouse. The valley remembered each step. We took, a quiet menace in the morning light. TL scanned the ridge, his eyes narrowing on shadows that lingered. K's absence was a weight on the team, a void heavier than any gear. The medic knelt to examine disturbed ground, brushing dust away to reveal scratches and boot prints that did not belong to us. His eyes were wide behind NVGs. The marksman lifted shards of metal and wire. Each fragment suggested deliberate placement, as if the unknown had been anticipating our every move. The breacher ran his hands over a collapsed wall, observing deep scratches that were recent. Whoever or whatever had made them moved with a grim calculation. A faint hum still lingered in the valley, vibrating through the ground and settling into our bones. It was a reminder that some presence had remained after we left the chamber. The medic exhaled slowly, running fingers along the straps of his pack. Even in apparent safety, tension lingered like a phantom, a constant warning. The team advanced cautiously toward a small clearing, each operator's gaze flicking toward every corner and shadow. The unknown had taught us that visibility is not safety. Dust swirled in the light, making the air itself visible, each particle carrying the memory of movement, struggle, and uncertainty. TL's hand rose in a silent signal to halt. Instinct screamed otherwise. The valley was silent, but we knew it was not empty. The marksman crouched beside a disturbed patch of dirt, inspecting shallow footprints that overlapped our own. The patterns suggested someone had been observing, testing our reactions. The breacher tapped a fragment of bent metal on the ground. The sound echoed a warning. We could not decode, a language of steel and fear. The medic moved quietly along the perimeter, noting faint disturbances in the dust. Small stones had shifted, suggesting a recent passage by unseen hands. TL's eyes lingered on the ridge where K had vanished. No trace remained, but the absence itself was a sign, a question the valley refused to answer. The marksman lifted a small shard of reflective metal. The angle of light caught it, creating a brief flare in the NVG glow. He pocketed it as proof of a warning we had received. The breacher crouched by an overturned crate, observing tiny, too neat scratches in the wood. They were not accidental, but intentional marks of a previous passage. The medic sighed quietly, brushing a layer of dust from his gloves, cataloging every detail for a debrief that could not answer the questions. The team moved as one, silent, aware of the fragile rhythm holding them together. A single mistake now could cost more than in the previous engagement. A subtle vibration ran through the valley floor, imperceptible to the untrained ear. It was a soft warning we could not ignore. TL paused, hand clenched, observing shadows bending in impossible angles. He said nothing. Words would have been a distraction from the unrelenting tension. The medic pointed to a small pile of debris. Bits of metal and wire had been moved, deliberate placement evident. We catalogued each piece, knowing the puzzle would remain unsolvable. The marksman scanned distant slopes, NVG glow revealing shapes that disappeared when directly observed. The mind insists on recognition, and our minds were betraying us. The breacher tested a warped pipe, which emitted a faint hum when touched. It was enough to make each operator hesitate, a subtle sign of an unnatural presence. The medic crouched, brushing away dust from a set of boot prints that ended abruptly. Someone had been here and left without a trace, an intentional message or a warning. TL walked slowly, surveying each operator, their positions, their reactions. Even in apparent calm, each man was tethered to fear, to the unknown, and to guilt over Kay's absence. The marksman picked up a broken cable, inspecting it for functionality. It was bent deliberately, like a signal for us to see, or perhaps a trap we could not yet identify. The breacher observed a deep scratch along a rock wall. The directionality indicated movement opposite to ours. Someone had anticipated our entry. The medic noted a faint odor, chemical acrid. It lingered in pockets, corners, a marker of a human activity we had missed. TL signaled to gather briefly. The team huddled, checking gear and each other. No words were spoken. Understanding flowed silently. The marksman traced his gaze across the clearing where sunlight touched metal fragments. Even light betrayed no answers, only more questions.